And welcome back to the Xan Shoob College Football Podcast channel here on YouTube. We are back and we are going to be doing another team draft, except this time we thought, hey, let's do something kind of fun. In fact, instead of picking the best teams, let's do a draft, but let's pick the worst teams. Let's see who can draft the worst possible team. And whoever drafts the worst possible team is going to win this little challenge here. So the way that this works, if you haven't watched our team draft video, we highly recommend you go and check that out. I'll link that in the description. You guys can find it here. But the scoring system is pretty much exactly the same as in that video, except it's flipped. So the teams that we draft, we will get a point for every outright loss. We will get a point for those teams not covering their spreads during their regular season games. We will get, of course, a push on the spread is worth a half a point. And then here's where the little twists come in. If your team finishes last place in their division or is second to last in a conference without a division, you will get 1 point for that team. If your team finishes dead last in the entire conference, you get another point. So if your team finishes dead last in the conference, they get 2 points, one for finishing last and one for also being second to last or worse. And then, of course, in the other video, we got a point for making bowl eligibility. So this is reversed. If your team does not make a bowl game, then you will get a point for that. The goal here is to not draft bowl teams. It'd be kind of funny if some of us did draft bowl teams. And then here are the points worth two here. If one of our team's head coaches gets fired this season or steps down for their team being terrible, you'll get an extra 2 points for that team. And if by some chance a team goes 0-12 and has a winless season, which is pretty hard to do, but it can happen, they'll get 2 points for that as well. And then the roster spots, it's quickly cut down. We're going to kind of run through this. It's the all 5 Power 5 conferences, 1 P5 flex, and then 2 group of 5/independent roster spots. So 24 total picks. We already chose who's going first. ZKS, back to back. He's going first here in this team draft, the fade draft, as we like to call it. Zach, let's get going.
Thank you, Shoob. I'm just going to hit off the bat. I love this team's over. I did bet this over personally, and I like the coach, and I like where this team's going in the future. But given the parameters of how this draft is set up, I'm taking Kansas as my Big 12 team. Give me the Rock Chalk Jayhawk.
I knew it.
I think that's a good pick because they are far and away the worst team in their conference. And even though they are probably going to be a little bit better this year, there's no one else who's going to contend for that bottom spot. So that automatically gives you those bonus points in the Big 12. So it's definitely a great pick.
And Absolutely. It's a testament to the conference being so competitive from top to near bottom. So that's what prompted me to take KU first overall.
And now the challenge further down the draft, Sam and I are going to have to each we're required to take a Big 12 team. So we're going to have to figure out which teams.
Makes it very difficult.
Yeah, so that's a good pick there. So now with the second pick here of this fade draft, I got to go into the SEC. And I think which team we're taking here.
That was going to be my pick. I needed that. I needed that so bad.
Clark Lee, baby.
Clark Lee wants to compete for national championships, but he's competing for the worst team on this draft right here at the number 2
I regret
spot.
not going first now. This makes things very, very difficult. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn my head over to the Pac-12. And I'm actually going to ride with Arizona. I think this team is going to be awful this year. I think this team is going to be terrible. I don't think they're going to win a lot of non-con games. I actually think 2.5 is kind of generous for them. I'm going to go with Arizona. And then I'm back to back here.
What's up? Division breakup too. I like that. You know, I know they're playing South and North, but they're just doing it as where you finish in the Pac-12. So you have a really good shot there of securing at least a bottom 2 spot with that pick.
It's between them and Colorado for sure.
I like that.
But I think they're the worst of that bunch. Now, for my next pick, of course, I mean, there are a few good options remaining for as far as Power 5 is concerned. But you know what? I guess they're not going to get back to me, so I have to go ahead and dive in and take one now. And I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to snag Duke right here.
Nice.
Duke off the board. So if you watched our ACC win totals videos, man, we really hammered Duke. And they were a lock to be under 3.5 wins for this season. I think that's a sure thing. But I was thinking about taking them here with this next pick, but there's another team in this conference that I am also thinking about here. And one reason why I'm really thinking about this team is, you know what?
Schedule.
I don't
Yep.
think they're the worst team in this conference.
Schedule.
Yep.
Like they could be better than Duke on paper, and they could be better than like Syracuse, but their schedule is brutal. And their head coach is probably going to get fired. Sorry, Jeff Collins. I'm going with Georgia Tech. I'm chasing a head coach firing here. And frankly, if Georgia Tech beats out Duke and they finish the top of them in the division, I won't be all that mad because it's more likely than not that Jeff Collins is out the door. So I'll more than likely get those 2 points one way or another.
That's a good pick, Shoob. Actually, it's probably a better pick than mine because Duke is not going to be firing Elko in their first season.
Right.
So that definitely gives you more potential for points right there. So I've really got to chase that last place spot.
Yeah, that schedule is that's a guaranteed like 8 or 9 losses there off the bat for Georgia Tech.
Just for context, you start with Clemson, you end with Georgia, and then you sprinkle a miss in there on top of just a competitive ACC goes playing Miami. That's just brutal. Like
And
y'all
at
said
UCF.
in your video, the AD and UCF, the AD needs to be canned as well. That should be another point if they get rid of him.
All right, ZKS back to back here.
Thank you. So I'm going to keep it Power 5. I want to secure a Northwestern in the Big Ten.
Ooh.
I love Pat Fitzgerald, and funny enough, when I would do picks, I always loved the ride Northwestern. But coming off of last season, and it's Northwestern, and I think they'll be fighting for that bottom spot over there in the Big Ten West.
Believe it or not, ZKS, I know Northwestern has the lowest win total in all the Big Ten. I actually didn't have them in my top 3 as far as who I was going to pick, just because Northwestern is so inconsistent, and I think they're very well coached. I think they're going to find a way to scrape together a few wins that we're just not expecting, and I don't trust it. I sniff a rat. And so for me, the Big Ten, it makes me feel better about my Big Ten because I've got a few people in here that I think that you guys won't pick up. So I can play the Shoob strategy with the American. Hopefully it doesn't bite me in the Cincinnati way. If you guys want to check out our our past video on this, but picking winning teams. But with that being said, I think you've got another pick coming up, don't you, ZKS?
Yes, I do. And again, Northwestern is such a wild card. So this could burn me, and they could sneak it into a 6-6. So I'm very intrigued to see what Pat Fitzgerald, who I do like a lot, what he does with this team. But yes, on to that next pick. I am staying Power 5 again. This is a team, because of the division they play in, this is why I'm taking them. And this is another team where I love the coach. And I'm actually going to see this team live in Death Valley in September, Mississippi State. And that's because they play in the SEC West.
Wow, I thought you were going.
In the SEC West, you've got Alabama, you've got Texas A&M, you've got Arkansas's improved. LSU's going to win that game in Death Valley. Ole Miss is a toss-up. They'll probably beat Auburn, and Auburn probably would have been the better play here. No joke. But I'm going with the Bulldogs as much as I love Leach.
That's a shocker to me.
That is a shocker. Shoob is really high in Mississippi State. He thinks they're a 7-8 win team this year.
I do. I did not think they'd even be. I'm surprised with that, ZKS.
I thought you were going to go Auburn 100%. I thought you were going Auburn, but
well,
we'll see.
So now that I can play a little bit of strategy here, and I feel like this plays into my favor. So Xan was hinting towards the Big Ten about how Northwestern he didn't think was the worst team in the Big Ten. I kind of agree. I did have them as top 3 or bottom 3, I should say. But I think that this team over in the Big Ten East is probably the worst team in the Big Ten. And plus the fact that the Big Ten East is just so stacked at the top.
Don't spurn me again, Shoob.
They're going to rack up losses. And
don't spurn me
even though
again,
I like
Shoob.
this program, I like Greg Schiano, I'm going Rutgers.
Okay.
I'm going Rutgers.
I can live with that. I've got at least one more dog over there.
I thought about Indiana. Indiana and Rutgers are sort of similar, but I think Rutgers is a little bit worse than Indiana, maybe a notch below. So I'm going to go with the Scarlet Knights.
Scarlet Knights.
Greg Schiano isn't getting fired, though. That's for sure. There's not chasing a head coach firing with that pick.
Well, I guess I'm up to bat right here. And seeing as I have an ACC I have my ACC taken care of. I've got my Pac-12 taken care of. And I'm looking at my options that are kind of limited now in the other conferences. I'm going to go ahead because I don't think they're going to make it back to me. I'm going to secure the Auburn Tigers right here because I'm chasing that head coach firing.
Oh, I really wanted Auburn, but I wasn't going to take them this early because I still think they're good enough to win a few games. But yeah, that head coach firing, that's almost a certainty,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately for them. And this thing could spiral out of control mid-season.
And
They'll
Shoob.
find a reason.
And
Right.
then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go with my back-to-back. I'm actually going to go chase. I'm going to get some insurance here and chase my G5 flex, and I'm going to take Colorado.
Nice.
Oh, your P5 flex, you mean?
P5 flex. Sorry about that.
Dude, I wanted Colorado. That was literally going to be my next pick. You freaking stole them from me, man. Oh,
What you get for taking
Colorado.
Vandy? That's what you get for taking Vandy.
I didn't think because you had already taken Arizona as your Pac-12, I thought that you weren't going to go back to Pac-12. Like I didn't think you were thinking P5 flex this early.
Well, I knew
So
100% that you were going to try to wait. And I was thinking, wow, I can get two of the worst teams just like that because I know Shoob's going to try to wait. Now, I don't know what ZKS is thinking, so I got to nab him. So
that's what that was
They
my
don't know-
thinking. Because you already had Arizona, I was like, okay, I'm going to snack Rutgers now, and then I'm going to wait because I didn't think you would take Colorado, and I get Colorado at number 11. So
Shoob,
you
my
sniped
friend.
him.
Shoot, my friend, I know your strategy. I know how you think. I've known you long enough, and I knew for a fact I could get you there.
That is actually a low-key great pick, and I regret not taking them earlier because I think that their head coach, Carl Durrell, it's his third season. I think Colorado is going to be awful. I think that they are going to be the worst team in the Pac-12. In fact, if you look at their non-conference schedule, they'll probably win a game or two, but there is actually a really decent chance that Colorado goes completely winless. I wouldn't bet on it to happen, but there's a good chance. They play TCU in the non-con. They go at Air Force, which I'm very high on Air Force. I forget who their other non-conference game is, but there's a chance there they lose 11 games, maybe all 12. And if it just is a complete disaster, Carl Durrell is going to be fired. That is a tremendous pick, San. You sniped me once again. So I'll get off of that little tangent there. Where's that meme? The smiling mask face, but I'm very angry underneath. Let's see. Now that you just ruined my strategy here once again in the second video in a row, I think that I am going to stay away from the Big 12 because it's a crapshoot after Kansas. I already got my Big 10. I already got my ACC. I am going to step into the independents now. And I am going to take this team because I think that they just overall could be the worst team in the G5. And plus, because independents don't qualify for those division and conference points, there are some horrible independents, but I'm going to take a G5 school here. I'm going to go into the MAC. Give me the Zips.
I
Akron.
wanted the Zips,
Welcome
dude.
to the
They
draft.
are far and away like the worst. Like I wanted the Zips, man. I'm so shook.
Yeah, they're going to be horrible.
They're
They're
horrible.
projected
They
to
might
win
not
like
win a
2
game.
games.
They might not even win a game. Like I looked at their
Yeah.
schedule. They might not win a game. Like
Right.
Yeah,
I don't
for
think their
sure.
head coach is at risk of getting fired, but they're going to be god awful.
No, because he replaced Tom Arce, so I think it's his first year taking
Right.
over at the helm. So you won't get the firing, but you'll still probably get a nice 2-10, maybe in no cover.
1-11
that's
maybe.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal pick. So I'm back on it. With this pick, I'm gonna chase the coach firing this time. Give me Arizona State. It's an absolute cluster out there. They might be an okay team. They might play hard in September, but I think the wheels will eventually fall off, and I'm really banking on Herm getting fired here. So
I can see that happening, ZKS. I think they're either going to win 5 or 6. I think they might make a bowl game, but the firing I can 100% see even if they make a bowl game, especially if they barely make a bowl game. So definitely, especially there's a lot of dysfunction that's been kind of reported over there at Arizona State. So 100%, I think this is a good pick for a coach fire.
They're dealing with a lot of scholarship issues right now, too. Right now, I think they only have, I saw that they only have, 74 scholarship players right now. Like they have depth issues. Like this thing could be like Auburn 2.0. It could just the bottom could fall out mid-season. Herm gives up. The team just quits. But the problem is they do still play in the Pac-12. So especially at the beginning of the year, there are some winnable games for Arizona State, but I'm with you. That's a good pick. I wouldn't have gotten this early, but in another round or two, I was definitely eyeing Arizona State. So that's a good pick.
With how my Pac-12 board was set up, I kind of had to make a move sooner than later, so that's what prompted me to jump on it. And for my next pick, I got to stay Power 5 just for the sake of cleaning this out. I'm stuck between two Atlantic foes, but I think I'm gonna trust in Dino. I don't think Dino gets fired, but give me the Qs. I just don't see, Syracuse making a bowl game. And in fact, I forgot what the stat was, but I think they've only made one bowl game maybe in his tenure. I mean, 6 wins is not frequent around there. So I think the Qs is a safe bet. And if they prove me wrong, then my hat goes off to Dino on that one.
No, ZKS, that's a fantastic pick. I actually had Cuse very, very highly rated on my board. But the thing is, just the way it worked out, I was kind of forced into Duke. I was hoping to kind of get Cuse if I couldn't get Duke and all that and still get a steal there. So I looked at Cuse's schedule. I think their line at 4 is very generous. I think they're going to be under big time. I think they might win 2 games this year and be last place. So I think that's a fantastic pick.
Yes, that's also a really good pick because Syracuse is in the opposite division of Duke and Georgia Tech. They're in the Atlantic. So Syracuse,
that's another reason I was in love with them.
Probably a good bet to finish last in that division. So they may not finish last in the ACC as a whole, but you got that division point. And you said you don't think Dino's going to be fired. I saw Dino's kind of on the hot seat. His hot seat's kind of turned up a bit. If they have a bad season, if they don't make a bowl game, I think Dino could be canned. So I actually think that's another great pick. 2 good picks there.
That's a fantastic pick at this point. That is the absolute steal right here.
Depending how this draft goes, that might be my pick of this draft potentially.
I think that is for sure. That is a fantastic pick at this point.
So now I'm kind of in a little bit of mud here. Don't really know exactly where to go because none of you guys have hit the G5 yet. I don't think I should just hit the G5 already. I already got one team, but I'll probably stick in the P5 since that's the direction we've kind of taken this thing so far. And this was a sleeper team for me. This was a sleeper team, and this will be a Pac-12 team for me. I do not have a Pac-12 slot just yet. And Colorado really wanted them. I think this is a team that could very low-key have a really bad season, and they do have a ton of returning production, which is a good thing, but the coach that's been there at this program, he's been there for quite some time, and it has been a slow and steady, just down and fall from grace.
Give me the third. Yep,
the Stanford Cardinal.
Yep, that was the only other viable option in that conference.
I'm not going to say that David Shaw will get fired, but I think that if they have a 4-8 or 3-9 season, which I think could be in the cards, I think that there's an outside chance David Shaw could be gone. But for whatever reason, they seem to love David Shaw, and they've kept him there for this time, despite the fact that this program, since he's taken over, has just gone slowly downhill for a decade. Maybe this is the year if I get lucky, but I think I'll take that Pac-12 team, and I don't think Stanford's going bowling, so I'll take that Pac-12 slot right there.
From making the Rose Bowl to going in the fade draft, has Stanford fallen.
Right.
So next up, I've got a back-to-back. I'm taking a look over here, and I do have some slots to fill. Shoob, you alluded to Indiana being one of the teams that you were kind of tossing between in the Big Ten, but I was actually looking over at another team in the Big Ten that I'm not as high on as some of the betting odds are. Their line is 4.5 right now, and give me the Illinois Fighting Illini.
This one's not going to go well on this channel.
Sorry, Dynasty fans, but I just don't think Illinois has a favorable schedule. I don't think they're going to perform at a high level this year. I just don't see it. I look at their schedule. I don't even see where they could possibly get 5 wins. It'll be interesting to see. I was between them and Indiana based upon what Shoob just took, but I really do think that Illinois is primed to have a worse season than Indiana this year.
Week 1, Illinois plays Indiana. So right off the bat, we'll get to see. That'll be a big swing for this draft for your team.
I believe when I was looking at that, I believe Illinois, a lot of their games against worse teams are away games. And so that's another thing that kind of factored into my decision. I think Illinois has a lot going against them relative to Indiana. So I like it. I like Indiana to win more games. So I had to take Illinois. Next pick, I think, is another team that is exceptionally terrible. And I'm going to have to go to the G5 because I'm running out of options here in my P5. I'm going to go with New Mexico State. I think they are just absolutely terrible. And if you look back to some of the recent games that they've played, they have barely beaten some and lost to some Division II schools. It's really like I can't even believe this is. I can't believe they're in Division I football. I mean, they don't play like it. They don't belong as far as competitive standpoint. They're non-con. I could see them losing all of their games. So this is an 0-12 candidate for me. I know their line is sitting at 3, but I'm an absolute under on New Mexico State.
They got an invite to join the CUSA starting next year because the CUSA had no other options after they got rated. So they won't be an independent anymore. I'm with you. I think New Mexico State is pretty awful. They definitely would have been the top of my G5 board if they weren't an independent. That's the only problem. Because they're an independent, you don't get the possibility of those extra points. So I'm going to once again here play a little bit of strategy. I feel like I can wait on a couple of at least one of my other picks on mine here. So I noticed that only one Big 12 team has been taken so far. And though the Big 12 is very competitive, I think that the team that I think will finish second to last in the Big 12, I feel like I got to get them now before Xan comes back to them. So even though I like this program, the directions it's heading, I feel like for this season, keep in mind this season, I think it could be a little bit of a rough go for Texas Tech. And again, this is just because I have to take a Big 12 team in this slot. And after Texas Tech, I don't want to risk taking West Virginia. They could end up being solid. I don't want to risk taking TCU. They could end up being solid. I think Texas Tech is that next team at the bottom of the Big 12 that might struggle a little bit this year. They do have a tougher schedule. They got to play Houston and NC State in the non-con. Some people think Texas Tech can get to a bowl game. I think maybe not this year, but in another year or two, Texas Tech could start winning some games. But for this season, I feel like I got to knack that second worst team in the Big 12.
That's a good pick, Shoob. I was definitely struggling to rank Texas Tech and West Virginia, but I really like their coordinator hires. And I think that they do have a pretty good quarterback in Donovan Smith. I know he's not starting right now, but I do think he'll take over midseason. I think we're actually going to see an uptick in Tech's play. They're definitely capable of upsetting some teams. And I would actually say on my big board here, I actually had West Virginia as the second team in the Big 12. I think they're going to be second to last. So I'm not too upset with that pick, but it's not a very confident thing. I think it's a toss-up between those two teams.
Both those schools have tough non-conference opponents too. Like I just mentioned, Tech has to play NC State and Houston, and then West Virginia's got to go at Pitt, and then they got to go at Virginia Tech. But I think another thing too is that Texas Tech, a lot of those toss-up games Texas Tech has against like Iowa State and TCU and West Virginia, off the top of my head, I think at least 2 out of 3 of those games are on the road, which doesn't help. Their schedule does not play into their favor as a middle bottom tier team. So I think Texas Tech is a solid pick here in terms of having to pick another Big 12 team. But now ZKS, 2 picks coming up. What you got?
So I really need to stop picking based off of my personal, I'm going to see this or I'll be here. But no, that's exactly what I'm about to do again. I'm going to be in New Orleans in September, and I'm going to take the team that plays in New Orleans. Give me the Tulane Green Wave. Willie Fritz is on the hot seat. This team won 2 games last year. I'm looking at their schedule right now. You got to go to Cincinnati, who, they're not last year's team, but Cincinnati's still going to be good and competitive. You got to play SMU. You got to play UCF. You know, if Shoob's pick works out, you got to play Memphis coming in from our other draft. ECU, who I'm high on. You're going to Houston. You play Kansas State as one of your non-con on top of playing Southern Miss. And don't forget UCF. This is a team, they could fire Fritz mid-season and they could still go back to either 2-10 or if I'm really lucky, winless. So probably 1-11. I see Alcorn State on here. So give me the Green Wave.
That's a good pick.
Hey, but they almost beat Oklahoma last year in Norman.
Well, they had to get things, Oklahoma had to get things figured out. Clearly, that's where Caleb Williams was playing. But no, very true.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No, of course. And then I'm just gonna get some hedge protection out in the ACC. Give me Florida State. Norvell getting
Oh,
fired, I
Florida
doubt it.
State. Oh
I
man.
doubt it. I highly doubt it. He's really in like a year two when COVID threw
Oh
things
man.
out. But I don't think this team's going to be good. At least good enough to make a bowl game. Yeah, I'm doubling down and I'm going to be at that game. So when they play LSU. So yes,
You
give
know
me
what? You making your picks based upon like what games you're going to be at, I think it's going to bite you, man.
Oh
very
man.
well. I mean that could be 2 losses for LSU. I would cry if it
I-
was, but no, I
Listen,
really don't think Florida State. I mean, I think they're at the bottom of the ACC Atlantic. I really do. Um,
hey, I'm I'm not gonna hate on it. I'm just saying I'm a little surprised to see Mississippi State and FSU taken on the board here on this draft. But I am with you though that it's probably a smaller possibility than people think, but there is a chance Norvell gets canned if this thing doesn't go well. Like if Florida State doesn't get to a bowl game, which they probably should. They they're projected to win 7 games. They should get to a bowl game, but if they don't, yeah, Norvell could be fired. So I think you got to have a lot of things not go right for FSU this year, but that definitely leaves the door open for this to be a good pick in the end. But we'll see. As of right now, though, that's an interesting one. But now that we're moving on here, all I have remaining left is a Power Five flex and one G5 or independent. I'm gonna go ahead here and go with my G5 or independent. This is a team that, again, there's a lot of really bad independents here, but I got to stick with a conference because I am chasing those extra points. I'm going to go into the Sun Belt. I'm going to try to pick the worst team in the Sun Belt onto my roster here. And they have a coach that is on the hot seat. If it does not go well for them this year, this guy could be fired. Give me the Texas State Bobcats. Texas State, oh, can't type right now. Texas State, they're projected to finish last in the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt Conference is going to be very good. They got all those new additions from Conference USA. It's going to be a very competitive conference, and their head coach, Jake Spavital, he is on the hot seat. So if it doesn't work out for them, I think that I could get a really good chance of getting those head coach firing or step down points. So give me Texas State. But I will say there are some other G5 schools and independents that I think are just as bad or could be even worse. But I think as far as coach firings, this one is the most likely. So that was the tiebreaker for me. So that's why I took Texas State.
That's a good pick, Shoob. With what I have left, I have the Big 12 and a G5 flex. I'm going to go ahead and take Louisiana Monroe right here. I think this team's going to be pretty poor. I think there's a decent chance for a coach fire. I'd like them for maybe 1 to 2 wins. So I think that's going to be 100% in my favor to get points. You can give me Louisiana Monroe. And then I'm not going to sit here and beat around the bush for who I'm taking for the Big 12. There's only one other option that even should be considered here, and I think that's West Virginia. And that is my last pick. So I don't think there's going to be a team necessarily that's going to be worse in the Big 12. I don't think West Virginia is bad by any estimation, but this is why I waited till the very end to get a Big 12 team, because I really don't think there's a lot of upside in me taking anyone in the Big 12 to this point, because it's going to be so. I think a lot of those teams are going to beat up on each other. So I really don't think there's going to be a lot of points to be had from the Big 12 here. So that's why I think ZKS getting Kansas, that was an absolute steal.
Right. I was just about to say, like, keep in mind, we have to pick 3 teams from the Big 12. So we're not saying West Virginia is going to be awful. We're saying we have to pick a third next worst team in the Big 12. He's just taking a shot at West Virginia, but that one could come back to bite because West Virginia could easily get to a bowl game and you won't get the bowl eligibility points. So now all I have left remaining is a Power 5 flex. And I'm a little surprised that this team is still on the board. And it also makes me happy because I have avoided the controversy of potentially having another team that's next up on my big board. But thankfully, this team is still on, so I don't have to worry about doing that. I'm going to take the Indiana Hoosiers with my P5 flex. I am pretty surprised that Indiana is still on the board here. And Yeah, Tom, I picked the over for them on the win totals, but I still think this is a team that doesn't get any more than 4 to 5 wins max. And Tom Allen, it doesn't really say, there's not really any reports that he's on the hot seat, but after what happened to them in 2020, they really fell off. And I think that if they have another terrible year, they're going to get beat up by Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Maryland, all those Big Ten teams. If they have another bad year, I think Indiana and Tom Allen could be, he could potentially be fired. But this late in the draft, I think they're good value.
That's fantastic value. I mean, the only reason I didn't snipe them from Yashub is because I already had those roster spots filled and I couldn't snipe them. Otherwise, they would have been long gone a long time ago. But I see this is where one of your waiting strategies does help when we have a limited roster spot kind of situation going. So it has definitely worked to your benefit. So I guess I can't always snipe Yashub.
Hey, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. All right, the final remaining pick in this draft. Who is Mr. Irrelevant of the fade draft? ZKS, who you got?
Josh Pate always taught me you don't lose the food. Give me Rice.
Rice.
Rice towels. I like Boomgren getting canned after the end of the season. And just for the sake of scheduling, USC, UL, go to Houston, UAB, UTSA's on there. Yeah, this team's not making a bowl game. Give me the Owls. My whole fade process started with Rice. Always fade Rice.
I like it. So far, instant reactions, I am pretty happy about my team. Now, there are some teams, of course, that we always discuss, like we did in the last video, some teams that just missed the cut. There's a handful of schools that were definitely worthy of being picked here. Some of them I'm surprised didn't. So starting with the G5, since I think that was a lot more open-ended and wide open because there's only 2 spots and so many schools. The handful of schools that I was kind of surprised that didn't get taken or definitely could have been taken were FIU. I think they're a candidate.
I had them on my list, yeah. Temple as well.
Yeah.
I may regret not picking Temple over Texas State because Temple is by far and away the worst team in the American. I think that they go winless in the American potentially. And even though they do play Duke and a couple other games that they could potentially win in the non-con, I think this is a team that could go 0-8 in the American. And then some other schools, New Mexico in the Mountain West, Independence, of course, UMass and UConn. I think if we were assigning extra points to the Independents, I think UMass and UConn probably would have been taken here.
Yeah, I had them on my list, but exactly, that's why I didn't take them, because they're not in a conference. I already had one outside of a conference. Yeah, I was between Temple and Louisiana Monroe for that pick.
So how about Power 5 schools? There is a handful that definitely could have been taken. Some viewers of this channel are not wouldn't be very happy if we had taken those teams. So one that I thought is one that we haven't talked about at all in the Pac-12. There's a ton of Pac-12 schools that we could have taken here.
Golden Bears?
Yes, Cal. Cal was a sleeper in this one. I mean, they could probably win 5 games. Maybe they get to a bowl game, but Justin Wilcox is going to his 6th season there. Like, he's on the hot seat. He hasn't gotten Cal anywhere. There's a solid chance Justin Wilcox could finally get the hook at the end of this year, but I don't think Cal is necessarily the worst team in the Pac-12. As far as the ACC, I was surprised to see FSU off the board, but I think Boston College also could have been a team that lost a lot in their offensive line. Jurkovic, has trouble with injury problems. Last year he did. And Boston College was a team I had on there. Of course, the Big Ten, we went deep into the Big Ten. And then in the Big 12, I think the only other team that I probably would have maybe considered is TCU, but I'm kind of high on TCU.
I think TCU has a lot of upside, so I did not want to. Yeah,
right. I think Texas Tech, Kansas, and then Texas Tech were like the only 2 like slam dunk picks in the Big 12. Other than after that, you're kind of just, it's a crapshoot. Like, who knows who's going to be good, who's not going to be good with the rest of that.
That's exactly why West Virginia was my last pick, because I was kind of punting the Big 12.
And then as far as the SEC, I think the next team that could have been taken is Missouri. I think that Missouri is the 2nd or 3rd worst team in the SEC East. And if you look at their schedule, it's pretty tough this season. They got questions at quarterback. And yeah, they did have a really good recruiting class last season. But again, like that's stuff that we're projecting to impact them in the near future, not for this season. I think that this season it could be tough for them. They got to go at Kansas State in the non-con, which I do not believe they will be favored in that game. I think Missouri is a team that will probably struggle to get to a bowl game. 5 wins probably seems about right for them.
It's going to be interesting to watch, man. I like college football, and I like the variance that we have in this draft. It makes things more interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, final thoughts here. Just overall, I think ZKS had a couple surprising picks, but I thought he got really good value with Syracuse when he did. Kansas at number 1 overall, very good pick. I think that ZKS was definitely chasing some head coach firing upside for sure in this draft. So, hey, if it works out for him, he could capitalize on those extra points, which could be pivotal down the road here when we get late into the season. I think that I probably had the safest draft as far as teams, Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, Rutgers. Those are all teams that are in pretty solid divisions and have to play tough teams all season long. I really like my Akron pick. Stanford,
I think. I was going to take Akron. I was so disappointed that you took them. That threw my draft strategy off because Akron was going to be my pick when I came up next.
All in all, though, once again, I really like Zan's team, especially at the top with Duke, Auburn, and Colorado. I think with Auburn and Colorado, you just took 2 coaches that could be fired in 2 teams that could absolutely, if things do not go well out the gates, the bottom falls underneath and they just are awful. No energy, no effort. They get blown out. They lose the teams they shouldn't the rest of the year. There's absolutely the chance that happens. I am a little high on Arizona personally, but absolutely, they could be a team that only wins 2 games. And then Illinois, I cannot get behind Illinois, man. I cannot get behind that pick. I think Illinois gets the 5 wins over Illini.
Oh, man. I don't know. I was looking at their schedule, and I was looking at how most of their games against teams of their own caliber are away games. I don't like that one bit.
Hey, week 1, Indiana versus Illinois. That's going to be a huge swing game for this.
It is going to be a huge swing game
draft, right off the bat. So let's get going. Indiana versus Illinois.
Big Ten was kind of tough. But I had to rock with it. I was thinking Illinois.
I'll say, Zan, I love the ULM pick because my mantra last year was fading ULM. And I might have been a year too early on that. And so you might have picked them in a good year for a very poor Warhawk team, especially. I don't know if you saw the schedule, but they've got Alabama in week 3.
I looked at their schedule, believe me.
That is absolutely brilliant. And then UL, who has had them and owned them in the last few matchups. I think that's a great pick, and you could have a very quality bottom tier Sun Belt team right here.
And their head coach Terry Bowden is also on the hot seat. He could very well be fired. Yeah,
I think from an overall perspective here.
Bowden.
I think from an overall perspective here, I think Team Shoob is the best team as far as, like you did mention, it's the safest team. But I think safe in a draft like this is definitely what you're looking for, because you're looking for the safe bets to finish last. You're looking for the safe bets to get fired. And then, I mean, that's kind of what ZKS was going for. He was going for those coaching fires. However, a couple of them weren't exactly safe bets, but he was really chasing the coaching fire. So if those pay off for him, this could really find a nice little swing in the draft, because if he gets the coaching fire, chances are things didn't go well either, and he's getting more points from those losses and lack of bowl eligibility. So ZKS, your picks could very well just turn around and like win you the whole thing, but they could also decimate you and just leave you in the dust behind everyone. So you're playing a very risky strategy. Shoob played the most conservative strategy. And you know what? I'm interested to see how it plays out.
Absolutely.
So I'm absolutely excited to see how this goes between this and the other draft that we've conducted. I mean, for me personally, this has just enhanced the season 100 times more on a sport that I already love. Didn't think I could love more than I already do.
And that's why we do this. We all love college football. We hope you guys do too. If you're watching this video and you've made it this far, let us know which teams you think are the best, or should I say worst. Let us know what you think in the comments. Which picks did you like? Which picks did you not like? Again, the goal here was to pick the worst teams possible. We want our teams to lose as much as possible. It'll be fun to see as the season goes on. A nice little kind of fun draft to sort of change of pace from what we've been used to doing. So with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed this content. And again, leave comments, guys. We'd love to see what you guys have to say. And we will see y'all next time. Team ZKS, Team Shoob, and Team Xan signing out. See y'all later.
Peace.
Roll green wave.